Hello, everyone. My name is Savannah Lee. I am a liaison librarian at the University of Guelph Humber. Together with Koshar and Amanda, Master of Information candidates at the University of Toronto, will present on our project, Accessibility and UDL in Action, Assessing Articulate Rise 360. We will share a bit about the background of our project, our findings, and also a checklist, as well as our findings related to health science topics. Over the past year, our pedagogical design have changed a lot, and the teaching has relied on virtual demonstration. We have observed adaptations and adjustments from both as students and also as instructors. And we'd love to contribute to accessible and inclusive learning experience for patrons and students. We understand that some librarians have been using Articulate Rise 360 to develop asynchronous learning modules. As we browsed the content and the platform, we found the tool easy to use and intuitive to develop interactive and engaging learning modules. Our two guidelines for developing the accessible and inclusive learning include AODA and UDL. According to the most recent Canadian Survey on Disability report, 1 in 5 of the Canadian population aged 15 years and older, or about 6.2 million individuals, have one or two disabilities. As we all realized how digital creates access and barriers at the same time, we hope our work would contribute to enhancing equitable learning environment. Over the past summer, we decided to create a checklist for best practices in accessibility and universal design in learning when creating modules in Articulate Rise 360 specifically. During our presentation today, we'll share our progress in the prototype phase and findings in more details.
Thanks, Savannah. So for this part, we'll provide a brief update on the current state of our project and the structure of our checklist, which is intended for librarians at the Gerstein Science Information Center and more generally health science librarians who use or would like to use Articulate Rise 360 to design asynchronous modules. Our checklist can be used when designing new modules or improving existing ones. So to start with an overview, our checklist begins with general points for modifying content on Articulate Rise, regardless of whether it is health science specific. The section borrows from the accessibility and UDL guidelines discussed by Savannah. We then go into health science specific concepts. The suggestions here may not all be applicable to your module, but the section does provide points to be aware of. Amanda will go into this further in the next part of our presentation. And then lastly, we have references and tools. These are resources for you to review further, as well as tools that you can use, such as screen readers to check your content. So here's an example of the general suggestions section. We divide the checklist to capture the main content-related and formatting-related tasks, such as adding learning objectives and captions. Underneath each heading, we provide a list of actionable items. For our further readings page, we identify articles and websites with more information on accessibility in UDL, as well as point to software that can help check the points we cover in the checklist. For examples of text readers, librarians can try JAWS, which is compatible with Windows and proprietary, NVDA, which is compatible with Windows and open access, and for Mac, VoiceOver, which comes with a built-in screen reader and works on mobile devices, and TalkBack, which comes pre-installed on Android devices. Now, Amanda's going to elaborate on the health sciences specific content to be aware of.
Thanks, Kausher. For the last part of our presentation, I'll be going over some of our findings from AR360 on common health science specific topics using a screen reader tool. To understand the challenges for accessibility from the health sciences discipline, we use a screen reader, NVDA, to read through these two health science modules from AR360, which are conducting a literature review and supplementary search techniques. A common practice in the health sciences is using acronyms when explaining frameworks and building search strategies. We thought about what the pronunciation of these acronyms would be using a screen reader. We found that if there are sufficient vowels or consonants to be pronounceable, the screen reader would pronounce it as a word, otherwise spell it out as letters. In this case, all the examples on the screen are pronounced as we would. So for the first two, PCC and PS, the individual letters were read. And for the last two, they were pronounced like the word pie and spice. It's worth considering if we involve new acronyms, how they would be pronounced. And when discussing health science databases, they typically contain both capital and lowercase letters. Similar to acronyms you saw before, the screen reader will try to pronounce them. Luckily, the case type doesn't seem to matter, but it matters whether or not the screen reader recognizes it as a word. The box in green pronounces these databases as we would say them, which are PubMed, Ovid Medline, Embase, SinoPlus, and Cochrane. For a database called PsycInfo, the actual spelling is on the second line of the red box. But when we look at the first line, it reads the individual letters as APA, PSYC info. But when you type PsycInfo with an H, it pronounces it properly like you see on the last line. So based on these results, we recommend spelling the name of the database correctly. It does seem that it pronounces them this way because it was programmed to do so. Another common issue we found was pasting an image with text. As you see in the screenshot, the word new filter and referred icon is highlighted on the box to the right. When you look at the alt text on the left image, it shows the name of the .png, which will be read out, and the caption does not point out the highlighted words at all. A better way is to highlight a particular component in an image is to use a label graphic, which is an interactive feature, as you can see on the left screenshot. It looks something like this in the right screenshot, where you can hover and click over the icon to show a description. Compared to the previous slide, the highlighted word was not even described in caption or alt text, and it would be difficult to explain just using text explanations. And here's another example of the label graphic where you can insert icons over an image, and when clicking on it, reveal an explanation. The last example is this image, where the steps to conducting a literature review are shown as numbered arrows. The issue again, as there is no caption or alt text provided, so the reader would not receive any of the information we see on here, but they would get the name of the image title. A better approach is to minimize the number of screenshots and opt for using text. An interesting finding is that the built-in numbered list from AR360 does not read the number using NVDA because it appears to interpret it as an image. I tried a test by putting numbers in front of bullet points, and the screen reader would say bullet 1, bullet 2. However, Savannah tried the screen reader on her end, and it did not recognize the bullet points, so there does appear to be a discrepancy within the screen reader itself. This problem only matters if the list is a process with ordered steps. A good practice is to use regular bullets if the numbering is not important.
Our initial research and findings using the screen reader, we have constructed a checklist on accessibility and UDL principles in action. Please feel free to use the URL on the slide and to use our checklist for your next accessibility project. We thank you for your time and attention, and we look forward to your comments and suggestions.
Hi everyone, my name is Julio, and I hail from Seneca College, and I'm part of the Seneca Libraries Sandbox team. The Sandbox is a digital media component of our library. We provide students with a range of digital literacy and digital skills support. Traditionally, this support came in the form of coordinating our digital media studios. We coordinate 6 studios that provides a hands-on approach to digital media creation. We emphasize a model where learners, through the support of our staff and our learning resources, are encouraged to engage with our technologies. Beyond our digital media studios, the Sandbox also supports a series of workshops. This is where we would, upon a faculty's request, visit a class to deliver a workshop that supports a digital media assignment. The topics vary and span from creating infographics to recording live-action videos and developing e-pitches and presentation skills, and more. Prior to the pandemic, we noticed that this model of support was already beginning to stretch us thin. Although our student staff helped us tremendously with running our studios, Our workshop requests were already growing exponentially, and we just couldn't keep up. This led us to rethink our delivery model. We pivoted from providing in-class workshops to a more centralized model. In our new model, we would schedule recurring weekly workshops where learners, be they Seneca students, faculty, or staff, were able to register and attend in one of our library's dedicated classrooms. We took this delivery model and the fact that we were offering workshops multiple times a week into consideration and decided to stop accepting faculty requests when scheduling our workshops. I'll touch more upon this mistake a little later on. The pandemic hit, and like for most, this disrupted all our methods of delivery. Our studios were shut down, and we were immediately left scrambling to revisit a delivery model that we ourselves were still in the midst of figuring out. Without our studio spaces, we quickly turned our attention to our workshops. We wanted to develop a strategy that would not only allow us to transition to an online delivery, but one that also satisfied a high flex model where regardless of the method of engagement, the learner would fulfill the same learning outcomes. Most importantly, we wanted a model that would be sustainable upon our return to campus. In the hopes to accomplish a high flex delivery model, we underwent a sandbox-wide renovation. This renovation project included revamping our online learning modules so they can provide self-directed learners with access to the content that we normally cover in our workshop. We continue to offer recurring webinars that were accessible to the whole Seneca community. These webinars were scheduled through LibCal and took place over Zoom. To accompany our live webinars, we also made pre-recorded versions to support learners who may not want to participate in a live webinar or who can't because of time restraints. Our webinars take advantage of live closed captioning, and our pre-recorded webinars offer downloadable transcripts. Let's hear from Ken, one of our Sandbox leads, as he shares a few tips he learned when creating these pre-recorded webinars.
Recording our webinars was a really fun experience, and I really only faced 2 hurdles. The first was using an underpowered laptop, and second, using video editing software in the cloud. When it came to rendering my video, the editing software constantly crashed, and I had to lower the resolution in order to create my final videos. So if you plan a recording, make sure your computer has sufficient memory and always use local editing software.
We leveraged SpringShare Spaces module to support our digital media appointments. Our DMAs let learners book time with a Sandbox lead to troubleshoot technical difficulties, refresh content that was covered in a webinar, or to brainstorm ideas for a digital media assignment. Let's hear from Mohammed, another of our Sandbox leads, reflect on our DMA services.
Digital media appointments are our way to connect with the students on one-on-one basis. Giving the students a half-hour time slot to assist them individually can be the only aha moment that the students need to complete their digital media school projects.
One lesson our DMAs taught us was to be more careful in how we marketed this service. We quickly realized we needed to differentiate ourselves from a tutoring service where learners expected us to participate in the building of their project. Instead, we wanted this resource to be seen as a support that helped learners work past technological hurdles, provide them with the opportunity to brainstorm ideas, and ultimately to set them on a trajectory to build towards. While on the topic of lessons learned, we did learn a few things from some of our missteps. We realized that regardless of moving towards a centralized webinar delivery model, we still needed to acknowledge scheduling requests from faculty. As much as a structured schedule would have helped us coordinate ourselves, we learned the value of remaining malleable to the course schedules and semesterly trends. With sustainability in mind, we kept registration open for all faculty-requested webinars to the Seneca community. This allowed us to amalgamate workshop requests, lower the number of workshops we needed to deliver, and it allowed us to better support courses with multiple sections. Another of our missteps was to focus the marketing of these services directly to students. We realized the need to encourage buy-in from chairs, deans, and faculty. To do so, we needed to ensure our faculty, who themselves were also transitioning to online delivery models, were supported when incorporating digital media assignments into their curriculum. Our faculty-facing supports also came in a multi-pronged approach. We leveraged the data we collected from Zoom to monitor usage trends and created a dashboard that faculty can use to verify their students' attendance. We created downloadable LMS packages that included assignment templates, rubrics, and LMS embedded content that incorporated our online learning modules and leveraged the ecosystem of support that we provide. Haley, our eLearning librarian, and I developed a faculty-facing workshop titled Define, Design, and Deploy, working with digital assignments and Sandbox assignment packages. In this workshop, we explore the value of integrating digital assignments into a curriculum while also showcasing the Sandbox's avenues of support. This workshop was delivered during a teaching and learning event and is being customized for department-focused delivery. Here's Haley reflecting on Define, Design, and Deploy.
The Define, Design, Deploy was really great because we got to work with a range of faculty, some who had never worked with digital assignments before and some who maybe were an expert, but we still got to offer them a little bit of something. By using these sandbox packages, the faculty are able to take that baby step, but then the workshop overall really showed them how to get in depth with the digital assignments and how they can expand their skill set that way.
We don't yet have a clear idea of what our return to campus would look like, but we do know that there will be a continued high-flex effort both at the college and at the Sandbox. We envision a model where our workshops predominantly remain online and our studio spaces are geared towards supporting academic assignments and creative building. We want to further embed data collection points into our resources to observe how our learners and educators are engaging with their content. Currently, we've leveraged Google Analytics to help inform us of how our learners are using our resources, but we're exploring new solutions to track how our faculty are utilizing our faculty-facing content. I truly hope you found this presentation to be helpful. We at the Sandbox are very proud of the work that we do to support our learners. If you have any questions, do feel free to reach out. We're always happy to chat about our ongoing efforts. Happy holidays, everyone. Stay warm and safe.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for attending our showcase, Collaboratively Creating EndNote Tutorial Videos, Successes and Challenges. My name is Cliniva, and I'm a Liaison and Education Librarian at the Gerstein Science Information Center at the University of Toronto, and co-presenting with me today is Kausher. Kausher is a Toronto Academic Libraries intern at Gerstein and a Masters of Information candidate at the Faculty of Information. We're going to start with an overview of our project and tell you a little bit about how it came to be. So firstly, it's important to note that this project involved team members from many different staffing groups, librarians, library technicians, and students across 2 libraries at the University of Toronto. Today, we are presenting on behalf of the other current and former members of this project, whose names you can see listed here. So in the health sciences, EndNote is one of the most commonly used citation management tools. This is due to a few factors, including its large storage capacity and advanced capabilities for working on systematic review projects. And because of this, we get a lot of EndNote related questions at our libraries. University of Toronto does not have an institutional license to EndNote, however, so there is no official support or personnel dedicated to this. Pre-pandemic, we offered a few workshops a semester on EndNote. However, we found that these workshops really did not always fit the needs of our patrons most effectively. Since learning EndNote is a very technical topic, users would often come into it with all sorts of existing knowledge and often would be looking for answers to very specific questions. Now that we teach primarily online, it adds an extra complicated element since we cannot give workshops attendees free access to EndNote in our instruction lab. So all of these issues led to the overarching goal of this project, which was to create an asynchronous learning alternative that would permanently replace synchronous instruction on EndNote. Originally, we had thought about creating a self-paced course on Quirkus, complete with quizzes and discussion boards, and we still may pursue this in the future if there is interest. However, we decided that making the materials as open as possible was the better approach and what we should prioritize. So we decided to focus our initial efforts on creating open tutorial videos. Here was the timeline for our project. So it started in August of 2020, where we had our initial kickoff meeting. Then September to December 2020 was our script writing phase. You'll see there was then a little bit of a gap, which we will explain later, but we picked the project back up again in July of 2021. And from then to now, we have been in the video recording phase. We are almost complete this project. Within the next few weeks, we hope to be able to move on to the dissemination phase and wrap this project up. We're now going to talk about each of these project phases in a little bit more detail, starting with script writing, which was the first phase in our project. This started with a brainstorm with the entire team where we came up with all of the different topics that we wanted our asynchronous learning videos to cover. We then divided these topics into what ended up being 15 different tutorial videos on 15 specific topics related to EndNote. Our goal was to keep each individual video short, under 5 minutes. Once we had our topics created, we divided who was in charge of authoring the script for that tutorial video amongst our team. Although one person was in charge of drafting each script, we also had a script review phase where the other members of the team took a look at the script and made any suggested changes. So in this way, each script had multiple eyes on it. Here's an example of one of the documents that we use for project management. And we use this to keep track of who was responsible for each script and to keep track of when each phase was completed. Once the scripts were done and the reviews had been completed, we were ready to move on to the recording phase.
For the recording phase, we created videos using the screen recorder and video editor Camtasia, which served as an all-in-one type of tool for capturing and editing demos and adding annotations and effects to increase clarity. Camtasia as a tool was useful because it also allowed for the storage of different types of media files and the insertion of voice clips. We first recorded the video clips with the screen recording tool, following the demo outlined in the scripts and using example EndNote libraries and database searches. The recording tool is incredibly flexible, allowing you to select the size of the screen you would like to capture and pause and restart recordings. Once recorded, the files were placed in a media bin for editing. The editing process involved inserting standardized start and end images. The end image can be seen on the screen, and splicing and separating of video and audio to remove any errors in the recording. Annotations were then added manually. To improve clarity, the Smart Focus effect animated the video to highlight the area with a pointer, and the local files were then imported in an MP4 format with 4K dimensions and optimized for download. Our next steps involve uploading these exported videos and sharing them with the University of Toronto community and more generally, those interested in EndNote 20 tutorials. To promote our videos, we use Canva to create graphics for social media posts. These posts describe features or cases where EndNote may generally be of interest and will include a link to the videos. We plan to disseminate these posts through the Gerstein Science Information Center's Twitter and Instagram accounts. We've also created electronic digital signage for our site.
Now we'll get into some challenges and reflections from the project as a whole. So as with most long projects, we did experience one or two roadblocks along the way. The first was that in the middle of the project, right when we had completed all of our scripts and were ready to start recording, EndNote released a new version of the software and moved from EndNote X9 to EndNote 20. Suddenly, the scripts that we'd worked on for months were all outdated, and we had to spend some time getting used to EndNote 20 ourselves and then updating our scripts before we could pick the project back up again. There is a silver lining to this timing, which is that hopefully our tutorial videos will be relevant for longer since we did create them right at the start of a new EndNote version. This does lead to our second challenge, which really applies to any tutorial video on a software, and that is that we know our work will only be relevant until a new version comes out, which hopefully won't be for a while, but really could be any time. Only time will tell if our efforts were worth the finite lifespan our videos will have. A third challenge was that over the course of the almost 1.5 years we've been working on this, we had a lot of team project members come and go. This was due to retirements, graduations, and people leaving and coming back from leaves. And all of this meant that our group was in flux. We had to redivide the work and change the job tasks of each person more than once in order to make sure that the project was completed.
Our next challenge involved Camtasia updates, which changed the interface and the method of including annotations and exporting the video, impacting the dimensions of the recordings and the final output. This required determining how to change the dimensions in the updated versions to ensure consistency and standardization across videos. While recording the videos, we also discovered, as our next challenge, EndNote quirks that we had to troubleshoot as we went along. All of this together led to a much longer timeline than we had originally predicted, and no surprise there. We had hoped at first to have the whole thing completed in a period of 4 to 6 months, but we're 15 months in now, though we're almost done.
So we'll just end with some reflections. The first thing that I know for sure looking back on this project is that it would not have been possible without our large team. Dividing the work on creating and recording the scripts was imperative, as no one person would have had the capacity to do this on their own. It also worked out very well for us as the two health science libraries at U of T to partner on this project since we had mutual interests. Also, having our wonderful students on the project was crucial as they did the actual video recording and editing, and we could not have done it without them.
And as a student, I found the experience really informative. The video software, as well as some of EndNote 20's functions, were new to me, and I found myself learning about the reference manager as I recorded. This became useful in my work outside this project when I encountered patrons that were having difficulties with the reference manager.
And a final reflection, as we mentioned before, is that only time will tell if our work was worth it. We plan to release the videos in the next couple of weeks, and we really hope that they will be useful to our community and beyond, since we have decided to make them all open. We hope that they will help our users answer their EndNote questions, and that maybe they will reduce our workload a little bit, but only time will tell. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. If you have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.